When it comes to budget optics, you basically already know what you're getting. Unless there's something actually wrong with that particular model or like a defect in that particular product, they're basically all the same thing. The only real difference is the aesthetic and maybe the sight picture. So when Pinty sent me this 20mm sight for review that is currently blending entirely into my shirt, I was struggling a bit because I asked myself, why would I choose this sight over any of the other budget optics that I already used? And I didn't really have an answer. So I started comparing the specs and features to the sights that I already own, and ultimately just ended up going outside and spending some time on the range with it, where I discovered something very interesting, completely on accident. So now I'm going to break down the 4 things I think you need to know about this 20mm sight. So to kick things off, the sight is $35 US. However, at the moment of making this video, it is currently on sale at Pinty's website, which will be linked down below, for $25 US, which is actually an amazing price just for any of these generic budget optics. And as far as literally being an optic, it's parallax corrected, eye relief, everything you'd expect from something that is actually an optic, and it works fine. I was a little concerned about the sight picture because I prefer very open sights, and the enclosure on this kind of reminds me of like an EOTech sort of deal, and I thought it would be bulky looking. But when you actually look down the sights aligned with the frame, you don't see these sides, and it's basically the same as all my others. As you would expect, the sight includes the 2 hex wrenches for attaching and adjusting the optic, a microfiber cloth, and a battery to actually power it. It does not come with a lens cover, however. And to use the sight, you simply rotate this dial. Any amount of rotation will power it on to either red or green, and rotating it 180 degrees will flip it to the next color. Moving it between the 2 colors powers it off. Unlike the other sights that I own, this is actually a free-form dial. It doesn't have clicking notches, so basically once you power it on, you are just finely adjusting the power output to whatever you want until you hit one threshold or the other. I don't really like this because I've never needed like 3% more brightness. I usually just do it high or low depending on what I'm doing. So I prefer the clickiness and definitiveness of having notches, but some people don't. And if you want to just completely freeform it, there you go. Underneath the sight, there's a little switch that flips to the 4 reticles that are available to it. And there are 2 spring-loaded bolts on the left and top of the sight to adjust your windage and your elevation for zeroing. Now, the next thing you need to know about the sight is less of a feature and more of a confirmation. The sight runs off of a single CR2032 battery, like most sights do, and it claims to run for 800 hours. Now, all of these sights should run for hundreds of hours. They use very little power. However, some of the clones that I own do actually suck, and either they don't actually turn off or they just have a ridiculous output, I don't know, but they only last for maybe 50 hours, 100 hours, whatever. Now, this sight I powered on when I took it out of the box, and I basically have never powered it off. So it's been running for at least 400 to 500 hours, and I'm seeing no drop in brightness at all. So I can at least confirm that this probably will run for a very long time, as they say that it will. Now, the third thing that we need to talk about is the durability, because a common complaint with these budget sights is that they break easily, are made of cheap materials, or that they don't hold a zero very well. Meaning once you configure your optic for a specific distance, how likely is it to actually hold that point before it starts shifting or moving around? Many of these sights claim to be shock resistant, if not shock proof. However, shock proof is funny to me because, like, unless it's completely indestructible, there is a point at which you can damage this enough that it will no longer hold its zero. Whatever. So I threw the optic on my blaster, zeroed it for the shed in my backyard, and I decided to test the 2 most common scenarios. The first was an impact, basically when someone runs into you or you accidentally slam into a wall. So I basically just smacked my blaster around, did a bunch of runs and hard stops, that kind of thing. No change in the zero that I could notice. The second is dropping your blaster, because that does happen, especially in indoor arenas. It can suck. So I just dropped my blaster. After a few of those, I didn't want to break my blaster, so I decided to take the optic off because it's made of aluminum, and I just dropped it on the floor, including the concrete in my garage. And after all of that, I still didn't notice any meaningful shift in the zero. There are 2 caveats to this though. First, just because I don't perceive a drift doesn't mean that there isn't one. It might be shifting things ever so slightly, and I'm just not able to see them due to the grouping of the blaster and just being a human that isn't perfect at things. However, if after all of that compressed abuse in a short period of time, it's only shifting an imperceptible amount to me, then I mean, that's fine, because this is more impact than I would normally sustain in the course of like a year or two, and if I have to re-zero once or twice a year, that's fine to me. Second, shocks are different from vibrations, and the way that you adjust these sights is with a bolt that is actually compressing a spring, which means that over time that bolt can actually rotate a little bit as it is vibrated and it will shift the zero one way or the other. As far as I am aware, there is no reason that this would be any less susceptible to vibrational shift than any of my other sights. And when you use very high-powered springers for a long period of time, or really unbalanced flywheels, you will probably start to notice drift. It hasn't been a major problem for me, but if that has been a problem for you with other cheap optics, I bet you would have the exact same problem with this optic. There's really no reason why you wouldn't. That one's really a time thing, and that's harder to test because I'd have to like set up a blaster and just run it for like hundreds of hours, and I'm not going to do that. But here's where things got interesting for me. During the testing, it was raining a lot because I live in Oregon where it rains a lot. And this got me thinking, because many of my sites are waterproof, but not all of them, so I wanted to double check, and lo and behold, yes, this site is labeled as waterproof. So, kept using it in the rain for a while, no problems. I decided to even submerge it underwater for a while, and again, no problem. Which makes sense, everything is enclosed and the battery is in a sealed compartment, so as long as you're dropping it in like regular amounts of water, it should be waterproof. But when I submerged it in the water and left it for a while, it got cold because, again, Oregon. And when I took the site out to test it, I noticed something, or rather, I didn't notice something. The lens was not fogged at all. Because again, Oregon, cold, things fog up easily. And all of my sites that I currently own do fog up, either due to my breath or just them being warm and the outside being cold, whatever, they tend to fog up. It's a very normal thing that happens to me all the time. In fact, during winter games, I normally don't even bother using optics because they just fog up on me so easily. But not this one. This site is actually fog-proof. It is labeled as such. Well, it's actually labeled weatherproof, but it does say it's fog-proof. There's some magic going on with a layer of nitrogen in the glass or something, but I don't care. My normal breathing does not fog this, and that is amazing to me. Now, if you don't live somewhere where it is cold and things fog up, then that probably doesn't matter to you. But if you do live somewhere cold and things do fog up, then there you go. This site is fog-proof. Now, many other sites are probably also fog-proof, but all things considered equal, if you're comparing two sites and you live somewhere cold, this is one of the fog-proof ones. Might want to pick it up. And after you pick one up, you can click on the video right up here in the corner to learn how to zero it so you can actually configure your site properly. Thank you again to Pinty for providing the site for review. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.